in the middle of a scorching desert military base, where the silence was only broken by the hum of distant choppers and the clanking of metal. She stood alone, elbows deep in grease, tightening bolts on a damaged hydraulic line. No one paid her much attention. To most, she was just a simple woman, quiet, hardworking, barely noticeable among the uniforms and ranks. She wasn't part of the combat team, didn't carry a weapon, and rarely spoke unless spoken to. But that day, something was different. The air felt heavier, the heat sharper, and she moved with a strange urgency. As if she knew this job wasn't just another routine repair. Staff Sergeant Collins had passed her a dozen times, without a second glance. But then the general walked by, his boots crunching against the gravel, and paused. At first, no one understood why. He wasn't the type to stop for mechanics. But his eyes weren't on the tools in her hands. They were fixed on the back of her neck, just above her spine. A faint shimmer of numbers was barely visible under the sweat and grime, like something etched into her skin. Coordinates. He barked out a command. 2 armed guards approached. She froze, mid-movement, as if her body suddenly remembered something her mind wasn't ready to face. The wrench dropped from her hand. The sound echoed strangely in the stillness. Everyone around her stared, unsure of what they were witnessing. The general's voice was sharp but curious. "Where did you get those numbers?" She didn't answer. Instead, her eyes slowly met his, calm, almost too calm for a split second. Something flickered in her expression. Not fear, not confusion. Recognition. And just like that, everything changed. Because those numbers weren't random. And they weren't just coordinates. They were a warning. And someone somewhere was already moving. The guards didn't move right away. They just stood there, unsure whether to restrain her or wait for the general's next word. But she slowly straightened her back, wiped her hands on her faded coveralls, and turned fully toward them. Her movements were calm, almost rehearsed, like she'd expected this moment. Her name was Leela. That's all anyone really knew. She'd been assigned to base maintenance 3 months ago, transferred from a civilian contractor unit with barely any paperwork. No one asked too many questions. She did her job, worked late, never caused trouble. But now, every pair of eyes around the yard was locked on her, waiting for something they didn't understand. The general's voice broke the silence again. "Where did you get those numbers, Lila? Who put them there?" Still, she said nothing. The silence only made it worse. A mechanic nearby whispered something about Black Ops experiments. Someone else muttered that he'd seen numbers like that before on a drone that went dark right before a missile test failed. Rumors spread fast in places like this. The general stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Do you even know what they mean?" She blinked slowly. Then, quietly, without emotion, she said, "Yes." It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Like she'd carried those numbers for years and finally understood why they were there. The general's face changed. His jaw tightened. He looked around as if suddenly aware of how exposed they all were. He motioned to a lieutenant. "Get her to command, now." Lila didn't resist, but just before she stepped into the armored vehicle, she glanced back at the damaged hydraulic line. Her eyes lingered for a beat too long, and in that one quiet moment, something began ticking deep underground, far away, yet not far enough. Whatever the coordinates led to was no longer asleep. The command center was colder than it needed to be. Inside, Lila sat at a metal table under harsh fluorescent lights, her wrists resting on the edge, still marked with grease. Across from her sat General Hawthorne, his expression unreadable. Beside him, a younger intelligence officer named Captain Reyes scrolled rapidly through a tablet, his eyes flicking up at her every few seconds. No one spoke for a long time. Reyes finally broke the silence. These coordinates. They match a classified site we buried years ago, a project that was wiped from every system. Hawthorne leaned in. Why are they on your body, Lila? And don't lie, we already ran scans. That tattoo, it's not ink. It's embedded. Microscopic tech. Military grade, but not ours. Lila's voice was calm. I didn't ask for it. It was there when I woke up 6 years ago, in a hospital outside. Kandahar, no memory before that, just the numbers and a note in my pocket. Follow the repairs. Reyes frowned. What do you mean? I've been moving base to base, fixing broken systems. Each one had something off, a missing relay, a damaged circuit. But when I mapped them out, she trailed off, glancing. At the screen, Reyes turned it toward her, like this. The image showed all the bases she'd worked at, pinned on a digital map. When connected, the route didn't look random, it formed a precise pattern. And the center of that pattern, the coordinates on her spine. Meanwhile, outside the walls of command, whispers spread. Soldiers speculated about Lila being a deep cover. Agent, a weapon, or worse, someone who triggered something beyond their control. In the hangar, a surveillance drone had suddenly powered on without a command. A maintenance tech swore it wasn't connected to the system. The engineer said that was impossible. But in the shadows of the base, something was listening, watching, and it had just received a signal it had waited years to hear. The base slipped into lockdown just before sunset. Sirens didn't wail, and orders weren't shouted. It was a quiet kind of lockdown, the kind that meant something bigger than a drill. All outgoing communications were cut. No one was told why. Lila was moved to a secured room inside the lower wing of the command bunker. It was colder down there, the walls thicker, the silence heavier. A camera watched her from the corner, but she didn't care. Her eyes stayed fixed on the screen someone had left on by accident, a satellite feed, focused directly on the coordinates on her spine. What lay beneath that spot hadn't been touched in over a decade. Upstairs, General Hawthorne paced the room, flipping through old classified reports. The deeper he dug, the more unease settled in his gut. Project Echo terminated, erased, buried. The files weren't just restricted, they were ghosted. Even Reyes, with full access, couldn't retrieve half of them. But one report remained. Handwritten, it described a prototype, a dormant system embedded in a human host. Something never meant to be activated. Outside, the temperature dropped sharply. Sensors picked up unusual readings below the base minor. Tremors, electromagnetic shifts, strange pulses. The seismic team had no explanation. And then, without warning, the power flickered. Just once, but long enough to cause unease across the facility in the drone bay. The same unmanned unit that had mysteriously activated earlier now had its optics locked onto a single wall in the southern perimeter. No one had programmed it, but it stood there, still, as if waiting. Rhea stormed into the secure room, breath shallow. We think something's buried under that site. Something built to respond to a signal. Your signal. Lila looked up slowly. Then you need to evacuate. Now. Before he could ask why, a deep, low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Somewhere far below, metal groaned old, heavy, and waking up after too many years of silence. The rumble didn't stop. It deepened, spreading through the concrete like something clawing its way up from beneath. Alarms finally triggered, but they sounded warped, distorted, almost delayed, like the base's entire system was being bent by a force it wasn't designed to handle. Troops ran to stations, engineers scrambled through diagnostics, but no one had answers. And at the center of it all, Lila sat calmly, her fingertips twitching like they were sensing frequencies no one else could feel. Then the lights died. Total blackout. Emergency power kicked in, but only dimmed the edges of the dark. In that eerie half-glow, the first real signal came through not through computers or radios, but through Lila herself. Her back arched sharply as her body trembled, the numbers along her spine beginning to glow faintly. Not burning, not painful, just alive. Reyes reached for his cum, but static poured through. We just lost uplink to all satellites, a soldier's voice broke in through the PA, panicked. Something's jamming everything except it's coming from inside the base. Hawthorne froze. Inside. Suddenly, a sharp, mechanical hiss echoed from the southern wall of the compound, the same one the drone had fixated on. Concrete cracked. A massive section of ground began to split, slowly revealing a long-sealed hatch, circular and scorched around the edges. No one had any record of it. Not even the oldest engineers knew it existed. The drone moved again, aimlessly, deliberately. It scanned the hatch, then turned toward the watchtower, and fired. An explosion rocked the tower, sending debris into the air. Panic erupted. Soldiers ducked, alarms screamed again. But Lila didn't flinch. Her eyes had changed, darker, sharper. She wasn't just responding anymore. Something inside her had taken command. "Whatever's down there," she said quietly, "it's not just a machine. It's looking for something." Reyes stepped back, face pale. Looking for what? Lila didn't blink. For me? Or what I used to be? Because the biggest secret wasn't what she carried. It was what she might still become. The ground split wider as the sealed hatch fully emerged, releasing a slow hiss of pressure like a long-held breath. The light from beneath it wasn't natural. It pulsed in deep amber tones, almost like a heartbeat. Everyone on the surface scrambled for cover, weapons drawn but useless against something none of them understood. The drone, still active, now hovered silently above the hatch as if guarding it. Lila stood at the edge of the bunker doors, her silhouette lit by the strange glow. Her spine now fully illuminated with symbols none of the command team could decode. General Hawthorne barked orders to pull everyone back, but Lila stepped forward. "It's not here to destroy the base. It's here for one last command." The drone shifted its attention to her. Its optics narrowed. For a second, Reyes raised his weapon, uncertain if she was still human or just a trigger in human form. But then Lila turned, slowly pulling down the collar of her coverall to reveal the full chain of coordinates. Beneath the numbers was a small, embedded device dormant until now. The glow from the hatch synced with it perfectly. A deep chime echoed across the base, low and mechanical, but strangely melodic. "I was part of Project Echo," she said quietly, "but not as a weapon, as the safeguard." As the hatch fully opened, what rose wasn't a machine of war. It was a vault told, armored and humming with encrypted data sealed from the outside world. Inside, it was a server node the size of a small room covered in frost. It held records, designs, warnings, everything the world forgot after the program was shut down. And Lila, once wiped and rewritten, had been its final lock. She stepped forward, and with a single breath, the glow faded from her spine. The system powered down safely. No explosion, no attack, just silence. But as the team moved in to secure the vault, Reyes glanced at his scanner. Something didn't add up. Another signal was pulsing nearby. It wasn't coming from Lila anymore. It was coming from someone else on the base, and they were already gone. The search began immediately. Hawthorne ordered a full sweep of the base, section by section, but whoever had slipped away left no trace. Reyes kept scanning for the second signal, tracing its residual path, and what he found chilled him. It had moved through the base hours earlier, before the hatch ever opened, using the emergency tunnels that hadn't been accessed in years. Whoever it was had known exactly when to disappear. Almost like they were waiting for Lila to unlock the vault first. Lila, now resting in the med bay, looked drained but calm. Her spine had returned to normal. No glow, no pulse, just skin. The embedded device had powered down permanently. Rhea sat with her, going over files recovered from the server node. Project Echo hadn't just been about storing classified data underground. It had been a backup plan for when global systems became too unstable, when truths needed to survive even if people didn't. And they had used people like Leela. Memory wiped and implanted as walking access keys scattered in plain sight. "I was never supposed to remember," she said, voice soft. "But something went wrong." Reyes nodded. Or maybe something went right. Across the base, the mood began to shift. Engineers studied the server. Realizing it held more than military secrets, there were designs for clean energy prototypes, encrypted peace treaties, early warnings of failed diplomacy, data someone had wanted erased forever. The general authorized a small team to begin decoding and preserving it. They agreed to keep it off-grid, out of the public eye for now, but with the intent of sharing the right pieces at the right time. The identity of the second signal remained unknown. Only a few caught a glimpse of the missing soldier maintenance tech assigned to the airfield, now suspected of being a second sleeper, like Lila, but activated for a different reason. His bunk was empty, uniform gone, and his access badge had been wiped clean. Reyes marked the event as a Category Black incident. No public record. Before Lila left the base, she stood once more at the edge of the hatch, now sealed and buried again. She didn't say much. Just watched the desert wind pick up dust and scatter it across the steel plate, as if the ground wanted to hide its secrets all over again. Reyes caught up to her before she boarded the transport. "What are you going to do now?" She smiled. Faintly, "Keep fixing things. One piece at a time." He nodded. "And if the other one comes back?" She looked out across the horizon. "Then I'll know where to start." As the chopper lifted off, carrying her toward another unknown post, the base faded behind her. But what she'd unlocked would ripple far beyond that stretch of sand. Somewhere out there, another piece of the past was still moving. Quiet, hidden, waiting, and now. At least someone would be ready for it. Because sometimes the simplest people carry the most dangerous truths.